we go.
Hi, I'm sitting here with Russell Wilson, one of the great saber referees I've ever seen. An amazing personality, a great Columbia star. But I know very little about how you got there before that. So first thing I want to know, Russell, is how'd you get into fencing?
I joined the club in my high school, and the level of instruction wasn't so great.
High school?
Suffern High School in Suffern, New York. And there was a great teacher who was supervising the fencing club. His name was Jeff Ackerman, and he did an excellent job. But when I do things, I kind of want to do them as intensely as I possibly can. And my mother told me that a fellow named Albert Axelrod was going to be giving a speech at the temple that we belonged to, the synagogue that we belonged to. So my dad.
And where was that? Also out in Long Island?
No, it was in Rockland County, actually.
Okay.
So my dad brought me to Temple Bethel Men's Club breakfast, and Albie Axelrod was there, and he gave this spiel about the Maccabee Games, and I got really excited about fencing. And we talked to him about coaching, and he said that if I wanted to take lessons, he would be able to arrange for me to take lessons from one of the best saber coaches in the world, and the head national saber coach at the time, Csaba Eltes, a Hungarian who had come to the United States in 1956 and was coaching in New York City.
And you know Csaba was my first coach?
I do know this.
And then he left Santelli's, went to Fencers Club, and that's when you got him.
That's exactly correct.
What year did you take lessons?
1979 to 1987. 1988.
So you went to over at 320 East 53rd Street?
I started out at West 71st Street, actually.
71st Street?
We were West 71st Street.
Oh, okay.
And then after a short time, I joined New York Athletic Club after about a year. And so I was taking lessons from Csaba twice a week at New York AC and once a week at New York Fencers Club.
Now, how did you pick Columbia?
At that time, I only applied to one school. I really wanted to be close to Csaba, and Columbia was the best school in New York City. And so I figured that was a perfect marriage of my interests. I wanted to go to the best school I could, and at the same time I wanted to be close to Csaba. So Columbia was the only school I applied to. I figured if I got deferred or rejected early decision, I'd have time to apply to other schools.
And tell me about your time, your competitive time at Columbia. Was it what you wanted? Did you enjoy it?
It was great. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I was on 3 junior world teams at the time. I was consistently ranked either first or second in the under-20s in the United States. I injured myself at 2 NCAAs, so I was only All-American twice. I was 4 times first team All-Ivy League. But at that time, as most people know, it was a limit to what American fencing was able to do at that time in the realm of competitive success.
Well, at least we perceived it that way.
Well, we perceived that way until someone like Felicia Zimmerman came along and completely changed the game.
You mean Felicia, our camera woman?
Felicia, our camera woman. She changed the game.
Not
for us.
Hall of Famer Felicia Zimmerman?
Hall of Famer Felicia Zimmerman. The beautiful Felicia Zimmerman.
Thank you, Felicia, for doing the camera work. So then you thought about maybe officiating.
No, I'll tell you what happened. It's kind of interesting. When I was 16, see, everybody gets into officiating kind of the same way. There's nobody to do it. And so when I was about 16, there was an open at New York Athletic Club, and opens in those days consisted of people like Peter Westbrook and Phil Riley, and my teammate at the time, Mike Lofton, now known as Mikhail Momento. And so at one point they said, let's give the kid a shot. You know, I was about 15 or 16 at the time, and they were quite shocked that I actually knew what was going on. And so at that point they said, you know, I mean, this is really quite good for fencing to have a referee this young who really kind of sees what's going on. And I also enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a lot. And so what I would do is either I would fence every weekend, or I would, back in those days we call it directing, not refereeing, I would direct every single weekend. I mean, Saturday, Sunday, all day, all night long. I would direct as many bouts at the club as I possibly could. And I was a teenager and I started to do, all of a sudden, national finals. And I also am very proud to say I had a reputation of being very honest. And so even though New York AC was my club, I took great pride in year after year directing the gold medal match in team between New York Athletic Club and New York Fencers Club.
But you know what though? Remember that family in St. Louis that you and I both got to referee?
Yes.
They did not feel you and I were fair to them.
That is very true. They were. I'm not going to mention what country they were from.
But they cursed at you in different languages. They didn't think you knew the language.
Yeah, it was quite unbelievable. There was a young 16-year-old girl who was quite pretty until she opened her mouth, and what came out from her mouth was almost incomprehensible. I mean, I had never been talked to that way in my life, and so I wound up throwing her out. Unbeknownst to me, her mother was thrown out on another strip across the room by Yergy rods, and then unbeknownst to me, her father was thrown out. But her father chased me around for an hour trying to tell me how horrible his family was, and I told him that I didn't marry his wife and I didn't raise his children, so it really wasn't my issue. And then they, once they got their black card, they followed me around for an hour. This was the days of public phones. And finally I couldn't take it anymore, so I went to the public phone and I dialed 411 and I said, for Kansas City, please, a federal government listing, the Immigration Naturalization Service. I looked up and said, 3 black cards don't equal 1 green card. And they made like the Flintstones. I never saw people get out of a fencing venue so fast in their life. It was fantastic.
That's funny.
It was really funny.
So tell me about, how does George Kolomanovich play into your life?
Well, George was a great friend and a great mentor. Of course, he was my coach while I was at Columbia, and he was extremely supportive of my officiating. There came a point when in Dry Saber, a couple of things were happening at that time. I was traveling a lot internationally. I had my B license in all 3 weapons when I was 18 years old. You can't do that anymore. You've got to be 20 to even take the exam. And some short period after that, I received an A actually in all 3 weapons. And so I was traveling quite a bit. And there were a lot of officials at the time who were kind of resentful that I was so young and I was getting to travel on all these trips. Andy knows some of them very well, in fact, and he knows this is true. But it was something that I really, I felt at that time that I could not have tremendous success as an international fencer. But I really believed at that time that I was capable of refereeing at the very highest levels of the sport. And that was borne out by what transpired over the next 10 to 15 years of my refereeing career. I always laugh when I hear people say they do it because they want to give back something to fencing. Okay? I don't buy this. Okay? People referee because they enjoy calling the close touches, being respected for being able to understand close fencing actions.
No, they enjoy saying simultaneous because they're scared to call.
That's true. I mean, that was never a problem for me. But, I never buy this or they're doing it to give something back to the sport. They're doing it to take something for themselves. They're doing it because they want to travel. They're doing it because they want to be part of fencing. Some people do it because they tried fencing and they weren't very good at it, and then they tried coaching and they're not very good at it, so they try refereeing. Oh, that's great, but don't give me this line that they want to give something back to the sport. What are they giving back? Their fabulous presence on the strip?
They're beautiful gray slacks.
Exactly. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know what your view is on that, but I'm not buying that particular rationale. Sounds good.
So tell me, well, men are usually just so giving. That's why they have to give.
That's got to be it. Absolutely.
So tell me about, has ever an Olympic gold medalist ever tried to kick you in an elevator?
I had something worse than that happen. I mean, I would say over my career, I've had some of the most, everything you could imagine.
Didn't Sharioni attack you once?
Oh, I had the whole Italian team attack me. In 1988, there was a competition in Lake Balaton, Hungary, that was held for maybe 100 years. I mean, maybe since 1896, the first modern Olympic Games, they held this competition in Lake Balaton, and we sent a team. And at that time, the only right-of-way weapons were men's foil, women's foil, men's saber. There were no women's saber, women's épée for that matter, at that time. And I was selected to do all the point weapon finals, all the right-of-way weapon finals, foil, saber, women's foil. And I felt pretty good. I was feeling I was a good tune-up before the Olympic Games. I felt pretty good about myself. Unfortunately, when I got back to the hotel, I found out that the Italian team felt less good about me than I did. And actually, a number of the Italian team members held me down while the team captain and some others hit me several times. Yeah, so about 8 of them held me down, and several of them really gave me quite a pounding. And it was both embarrassing.
Is this before you refereed?
This was 2 weeks before the Olympic Games. This was after I refereed. So I guess, the results, which I thought I adjudicated the touches just fine, but I guess they had a different view of how I was calling them. But the amusing thing about it is, I mean, if there's anything amusing about it, because trust me, at the time it didn't seem amusing.
But it is now.
Yes. Peter Westbrook was I was very close with the team at the time. These were my big brothers. I mean, they were my dear friends, my training partners. And Peter had been a boxer. He was a ranked amateur boxer before he became a fencer. And the next day he searched the airport in Budapest trying to find Attilio Fini, the team captain, and he was going to beat the hell out of him. Now, he didn't find him, luckily, and things worked out. And 2 weeks later, I was at the Olympic Games, and I actually reffed quite a few Italian bouts. I don't know if they did that figuring that I would be inclined to favor them because I'd be afraid people would think that I was trying not to favor them or whatever. But some bouts they won, some bouts they lost, just like every other time I refereed. It had absolutely no impact on my adjudication of the touches at the Olympic Games. None.
So I want you to tell me if there's a person out there that you just look at him fence, or you look at him referee, or you look at some guy you think is just the best. Who's the person you've admired over the years? Someone you admired so highly?
Okay, I can tell you that in foil, one of my best friends, who retired actually in 1988, I can tell you that one of my very best friends, he was an usher at my wedding. It was Thierry Bruquier. He was, in my opinion, the best foil referee in the world, and he was cool as a cucumber. He was absolutely fantastic.
Have you been married once?
I've been married once, yes.
Okay. So it is your wedding. I was making sure it wasn't two weddings.
No, it was my wedding. I mean,
yeah, okay.
Since that time, I scrupulously avoided another marriage with a fencing referee, but that's just the way it is, you know. Some things fly and some things don't, you know.
So Bruquier is one of the best.
He was maybe the best foil referee in the world at the time. At that time in Sabre, there were a number of very highly ranked referees, and I've got to say that I am honored to say, and I really don't. You have to understand my view of refereeing. I don't view us as the aristocrats of the sport as some of these people do. I think that's moronic. We're the servants of the sport, and I'm proud to say that during that particular period of time, I would put myself, and other people would agree, that I was in the class of among the very, let's say, 4 best Sabre referees in the world. At that time, John Zarno of England. Now, all of us had different personalities and different quirky traits, but we were very, very good, and we were. The other thing is, I can tell you that none of us ever considered giving a touch on purpose against somebody, either for retribution or to help somebody. I mean, I was offered bribes, I was offered vacations. The Italians offered me to do a fencing clinic in the Italian Riviera for 1 day and to stay there for another 14 days. I told them I could go on vacation when I want, and that wasn't going to be a consideration. I had other federations threaten that I wouldn't, that they would try to block me from going to Olympic Games. None of this was important to me. The only thing that I cared about, and the only thing that I care about now as a coach, is that I want to do everything I possibly can to create a fair environment for these people out there, because they train like crazy. We as coaches train them like crazy, and they deserve nothing less than the very, very best that I can provide. Am I always going to be right? Of course not. But I can tell you that I've always tried my very best to adjudicate every touch based on the rules of fencing to the best of my ability and the best of my ability to see it. And I let no other consideration come into effect other than that. Never.
I got one final question for you. I was in a jury with you one time, and I was to your right, and we were doing, it was like final pool, national championships, 87, Arizona, Phoenix area.
Got a great memory, Andy. That's why you're such a great curator of this museum.
And of course it was standard non-electric saber. Peter was fencing against maybe a Gonzalez Rivas or one of those very handsome AC guys. And
not me, of course. I wouldn't fall into that category you just described.
And you were the ref. And at one point, you made a call in favor of Gonzalez Rivas or one of those men from there. And he leaned over you and he whispered like something like that.
What?
Yes.
And then you got really angry at him.
Yes.
But the people in the audience, he said, "Fuck you," and smiled.
Yes.
He smiled and he cursed at you.
Now,
And most people thought you were becoming nasty and they didn't understand out there.
Now let me tell you a great story. This is actually.
Now is that what he did frequently with you, or was he joking?
Peter and I are very good friends.
What was he doing? In that
very
time?
Good friends. Peter had a very intimate way of, let's say, making his feelings about a particular call known, where only the referee was aware of it. And
but you did get annoyed.
No one else. Oh yes. I mean, when someone says "fuck you" to you, even under your breath, you kind of take a, you're taken aback a little bit. But I'll tell you my very favorite one, and it's like all things are well that end well. In 1984, I was doing every four-lane saber final in the United States, and Peter had to, the very first qualification for the Olympic game was the first North American Cup event. Peter was fencing Jean-Marie Banos, and he wasn't happy with one of the calls, and he said, "Fuck you" to me. And I said, "Pete, I don't really think you want to say that. I said, that's not nice. I wouldn't talk that way to you, and I'd be most grateful if you wouldn't talk that way to me." He said, sorry, Russ, and he gets back on guard. So 2 seconds later, he takes his mask back off, and he whispers under his breath, and again, the audience can't hear what's happening. He says it again to me. So I said, "Pete, you know me too well. This is really not going to end up well, and I'd be most grateful if you wouldn't do that, because it's rude and you're beginning to hurt my feelings, and I'm going to have to take some pretty serious remedial measures fairly soon." So Pete says, "I'm so sorry, Russ." He gets back on guard. He takes his mask off and he says, "Fuck you" one more time. So at that point, I give him a black card. And, well, actually, it wasn't black cards. I threw him out for unsportsmanlike conduct. I filled the paperwork out, got my coat, and ready to leave. He comes running over. He says, "Russ, I'm so sorry. I can't believe I behaved that way. I'm so sorry." I said, "Pete, thanks. I really appreciate that." So I'm about to walk out. He's getting back on guard. He calls me over. He says, "Where are you going?" I said, "I'm going home." He says, "But I apologize." I said, "Yeah, now I'll talk to you again." He said, "You mean I'm still out?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "Fuck you." So I leave. Now, none of this gave me any pleasure. Peter is a very dear friend. He was a great fencer, and this was with a very heavy heart, because this was the first qualifying tournament for the Olympic Games, which he eventually won a bronze medal in, 1984. And to make the team now, he could not have a single mistake happen, but I didn't have a choice, okay, by the rules of fencing. And in order to create an equal playing ground for everyone, it would be unfair if I didn't follow.
Well, you gave him a break on the first FU and the second FU.
Yeah, I did. And then I get a call from him the next day, Monday. He says, "Russ, come on down to the Fencers Club at 7 o'clock. I figure he either wants to kill me or we're going to make up, So I went down to the Fencers Club that day, and Pete was there with a bottle of champagne and some beer. And we sat outside the Fencers Club, and we drank the champagne and we drank the beer, and he apologized to me for his behavior. And it was really a wonderful moment. I mean, he understood that I had no choice, and we're very dear friends. I mean, I was in a terrible car accident. When Peter found out, he was checking on me regularly. Peter is a gentleman. He was a brilliant fencer. I mean, there was electric fencing back in those days.
I just had to tell you, I remember him doing that. I was there.
Yeah, I just want to make it clear that absolutely happened. That was a part of Peter's fencing persona. But I also want to say that he's a great gentleman, and all of us have our quirky personality characteristics.
Absolutely.
And my life is richer for having him been my friend all these years.
I agree with you totally about Peter. Hey, thank you so much, Russell Wilson.
Thank you very much.
And
thanks, Andy. You do a great job with this museum. It's unbelievable.
Thank you.
And thanks for the little joke you played with me this weekend with that museum. It was fabulous.